this session, and we're going to welcome Candace Smith to the stage. Candace, please take it away.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great, awesome. Hi, as Eric said, my name is Candace Smith, and I am a technical sales manager here with rbr. And as the title suggests, I'm going to talk to you today about Ruskin Mobile, in particular, some of the cool features that it has, and how you can use Wi-Fi to access your logger, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so there we go. Just to give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to start with some motivation about why you would even want to use Wi-Fi, how to actually connect your device to a logger. And throughout the presentation, when you hear me say device, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about my iPhone, because that's what I typically use when I'm doing this. But it could be an iPad as well, or something similar, a phone or a tablet. I'm just going to go over just really briefly what Ruskin Mobile is in terms of what are all the different what all these different letters and numbers are on here, what they're for, and I'm going to talk about two different case studies to just get further into the features. So how to quickly view your data, which is essentially near real-time data, how to control your sample rate using Ruskin Mobile, how to share your data, because once the data is on your phone, you know, you want it actually on a computer or send it to somebody else for them to look at. How to GPS tag one specific location, and how to actually have a full GPS track of your whole cruise. And then I'll just go over some key points at the very end. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with rbr, you're likely familiar with this logger. This is our standard loggers, and Wi-Fi is on board all of the standard loggers. So it's the white logger with the red end cap. So that's the easiest way to remember it. These are lightweight, low power loggers. You can get from one instrument, one sensor up to 10. So you can just have temperature, or in this case, this picture is actually an rbr Concerto CTD with Wi-Fi, which is a really common configuration. All of our standard loggers have what we call twist activation. That means you just take the end cap and you twist it from pause to run, and then it starts sampling all of the channels all at once. And that's always included. And if the Wi-Fi is enabled on your logger, this twist activation from pause to run or run to pause is also turning on the Wi-Fi. So I just wanted to give you an overview of sort of which loggers you can get the Wi-Fi on. Oh, and here's just a short video. I hope it plays nicely on your screen that shows you the CTD here, and at the bottom, the twist for Wi-Fi, and now you can see Ruskin Mobile operating here. And I'm going to go through what all of these different screen shots you're seeing here really quickly are as we go through the presentation. Okay, so why would you even want to use Wi-Fi? I think one of the greatest things about this is that you can actually download data off of your logger without having to open up the logger. And for field-going scientists, I think that you can appreciate how useful that is. If you open up your logger in the field, you're exposing it to like moisture, dirt, you're exposing the electronics, the batteries, your desiccant, and your O-rings. So it's a really, really great way to get the data off your phone without compromising, or the data off your logger without compromising your data or your instrument itself. So I think that's a really key thing to think about when you're in the field, how nice it would be to not have to open up the logger. As an oceanographer with my background, I think of how useful it would have been to be able to get CTD data off a logger while I was on a cruise and in between stations. So you would do, say, a cast of 500 meters, the CTD comes back to the surface, and instead of having to fully recover it, take off the end cap, download the data, check the O-rings, it's just really useful to be able to just be on the deck, and then once the CTD comes to the surface, all the data just comes onto your phone from that cast, and then you can process it while you're waiting to go to the next station. And it's also a really great way to make sure that, let's say you have 10 casts in a particular day, and you're a little bit nervous maybe that you're going to lose the CTD. It's a great way that in between every single cast that you can actually download the data, so you're actually protecting your data so you have it and you're not losing that critical information. Another cool application is, let's say you have a 6-month long deployment. for in a moored situation, you're gonna leave a logger out for 6 months, but maybe you don't want to wait 6 months to get the data. So, but you're a little worried about going out and actually opening up and doing a full recovery if you don't need to. So perhaps after 3 months, you have an opportunity to go grab the CTD or whatever you're measuring, twist the end cap, download 3 months worth of data, twist the end cap back so it keeps recording, and redeploy it. So that might be really useful if you have like a summer student and 6 months is too long for them to get the data. So that's also a really cool application. Another really useful feature of using Ruskin Mobile and the Wi-Fi is that you can actually see the data essentially in real time or very quickly. So right after a cast, you can look at the data. I particularly like to show citizen science groups, including school-aged children, how cool this is by setting up Ruskin Mobile on my iPad and showing them how when we add salt to water, how the salinity channel changes in real time. And I think it's really a great way to show people, how, if they're not familiar with what a CTD is, how it works. And I'm going to go into this a little bit more detail later when I talk about one of the case studies is in fisheries. It's really useful to get the data really quickly to make fishing decisions. And I'm sure like the flexibility of the app and using the Wi-Fi is really awesome. I'm sure lots of you on the call are like me who are avid Apple users. So I love that I can download the app onto my iPhone, my iPad, and obviously having Ruskin on my Mac as well, but you can also use it on other devices like tablets, Androids, and PC. So one thing to note is that you can actually connect via Wi-Fi from your logger to the standard Ruskin desktop that you're currently using on your computer, which can be also super useful to have the full functionality of Ruskin without having to open up and use the USB cable. I'm not going to go too much into detail about that. I believe in a couple of weeks, Greg is going to talk a lot more about Ruskin detail, so I'll leave that to him. So the very first step in using this is to connect your logger to your device. So again, I'm thinking my iPhone to my CTD. Okay. So the first thing is you want to download Ruskin Mobile app onto your device for me, it's here in the App Store. So I just opened up my App Store, typed in Ruskin, boom, here it is, the first hit. I downloaded it. Easy, so now it's on my phone. The next thing is I want to make sure that the Wi-Fi is actually enabled on my logger. So when we ship our loggers at RBR, we ship them out of the box ready. So we ship it so that when you receive it, you can take it out of the box, twist the end cap, and now it's going to start recording. And if the Wi-Fi is enabled, the Wi-Fi is going to kick on when you twist it. You might not have a logger that's directly shipped from us right now. There might be a logger that's sitting on your desk, or maybe you've already had a deployment. So you probably want to jump on Ruskin desktop. So this is just Ruskin desktop here. And here on the right-hand side, you can see where you can turn the Wi-Fi on. So here, in this case, the Wi-Fi was off. So I just want to make sure that that's enabled. So essentially, you need to have Ruskin on your computer, or sorry, Ruskin on your device, so your phone, and the Wi-Fi enabled on the logger. One tip that I've come across over the years is that if you're using multiple devices, like I am, using your iPad and your iPhone, you just want to ensure that if you're connecting your logger to your iPhone, and now you want to switch to your iPad, that the Ruskin Mobile is completely closed on your iPhone so that you can connect to your iPad, because the logger can only be connected to one device at a time. One logger can be connected to lots of different devices, but only once at a time. Okay, so how to connect? See if this is going to work. Okay, so now you have everything ready. You're going to twist the end cap from pause to run. This is my boomerang video that I did yesterday. When you twist from pause to run, the Wi-Fi turns on for 1 minute. So in that 1 minute time, you had to go onto your device and connect. Every time that you twist from pause to run or run to pause, the Wi-Fi is turned on. So if you didn't have the Ruskin mobile app downloaded and you tried to connect and then you realize, oh, I don't even have the app, you just need to twist the end cap back to pause to get the Wi-Fi to kick on once you've downloaded it. So when you twist from pause to run, you're going to notice that the logger is going to vibrate. At the exact same time, it's going to create its own network. So here you can see I'm under the settings on my iPhone, and I can see this RBR with this number. So this is an RBR instrument, and this is just the serial number of which logger it is. Once you actually select this network to connect to, you're going to notice that you're no longer connected to your home Wi-Fi anymore, or your work Wi-Fi, wherever you're doing this. So here you can see, oops, I'm connected to the logger, and up here you can see I'm on my LTE network. One important thing to note, and a common question that we get is, well, I'm off deploying offshore, so there's no Wi-Fi and the boat doesn't have Wi-Fi. You don't need a Wi-Fi tower to actually do this connection. The logger itself is the router point, so you don't need to be close to shore. It's just a connection between your device and the logger. Okay, so that's just the basics on how to connect. So now we're going to talk about actually what Ruskin looks like, what it does. So now you're connected to the logger's Wi-Fi. So your device is connected. So now you need to actually open up Ruskin Mobile. And Ruskin Mobile is going to automatically connect to the logger. So you're going to see this screen first that is trying to find an instrument. Then it's going to download any data that's already on the logger. So you can see here, I already had some data collected, and now it's just downloading that. And Ruskin Mobile is automatically collecting the most recent data from the logger. So it's constantly syncing and constantly updating. If you have a CTD next to you right now and you're connected, it's pulling all of the data from the logger onto the instrument. Onto Ruskin Mobile. So Ruskin Mobile is storing all the data. And that's gonna be really important for what we talk about later. So the most recent data is always on the logger when it's connected. And Ruskin Mobile also automatically defaults to this instrument tab. So this screenshot here, this picture, we're gonna keep coming back to this because this is sort of the starting point for Ruskin Mobile. Okay. So how does it actually work when it's deployed? So your logger is ready, you twist it at the surface, you're connected, everything's good. And then you start deploying the logger beneath the water. And once it hits 1 meter, the Wi-Fi turns off because the Wi-Fi, you can't transmit from underwater back to the surface through the Wi-Fi. And then you do a deployment, say down to 750 meters. And then as it's coming back to the surface, the Wi-Fi turns back on at 2 meters depth, so that when it gets back to the surface, your phone can easily connect and you can get the data. You don't have to worry about leaning over to twist the end cap to try to get the Wi-Fi to connect again. It should just connect automatically once you get back to the surface. Okay, so let's go over exactly what the first tab here is showing us. So at the very top, it's showing us the instrument name and serial number. So it's the concerto, and you can see the serial number. Then right under that, we have some logger details, such as the number of samples that have been collected, how fast we're sampling, and whether or not the logger is currently sampling or if it's paused or off. Here we have just a simple plot of the parameters. We have some GPS details. Again, I'm going to go into these in more detail. And at the bottom here, we have some measured channels. I'm going to show you how to actually see all of the measured channels. And at the very bottom, we have 4 different tabs, and I'll show you what is in each of those as we go on. Okay, so now we're getting into the meat. So Ruskin Mobile features. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a case study that's a real case study. So we have a group of fishermen who are using a CTD with the Ruskin Mobile, and they're using that data to determine whether or not they're going to fish here or if they're going to move to a different location based on the data. And since they're working with local researchers and scientists, they want to be able to share this data with the researchers by uploading the data sets from their devices to a cloud, or just maybe even texting a data set. In particular, this is exactly what they want to do. They want to view the data in real time or near real time to determine whether they should fish here. Specifically, they want to look at salinity. So they're not interested in other channels right now. They just want to focus on the salinity. They want to change the sample rate. So there are multiple fishermen who are sharing the CTD, and fisherman A likes to hand lower the CTD. So he would sample maybe at 1 hertz or 2 hertz, whether there's a larger fishing boat that's actually using a winch to deploy it. So they want to sample a little bit faster because they can make the CTD go faster. So maybe they want to sample at 32 hertz. So they need to be able to change the sample rate, which they are going to do through Ruskin Mobile. And finally, they want to be able to share the data with the scientists, with their collaborators. And here on the right, you can actually see an image of a citizen science team actually doing this very thing, that they're looking at the data in real time when they're doing a deployment to actually see what's going on. Okay, so again, we're back to this view for the first time that you connect to the logger to Ruskin Mobile. This is what it looks like. So the first thing is that if you want to see all of the channels, you can see here we can only see connectivity. You're going to click down at the bottom and pull the screen up, and then you're going to see all the channels. So in this case, this is a CTD, and we're measuring the connectivity, the temperature, and the pressure. And we're getting depth and salinity as 2 of the drive channels. So now I can see all the channels that I want. I can see all the channels that are here. And now I'm going to focus on trying to get just the salinity data, because that's all I'm interested in. So I'm going to hit the view button here. So I've already done 5 casts, and all this data is now on my device. So here we have a CTD profile. So on the y-axis here, it's depth. And on the x-axis, you can see we have connectivity, temperature, and salinity. So I'm only interested in the salinity because that's how I'm going to determine where to fish. So I'm going to click down here on the actual words like connectivity, temperature, and salinity. And this handy little table pops up. And here I can actually turn off channels I don't want to see and turn on channels that I would like to see. So in this case, I'm turning channels on and off until, here we go, I just have the salinity. And now I have just a salinity profile. So these fishermen are looking for a particular salinity value. That value, I can't tell you what it is, because it tells them whether or not this fish likes this value or that value. But in this case, it's super easy for them to just, again, connect. They open up Ruskin Mobile, they can view it, just pop off a couple channels and just quickly see what's going on. And within a few minutes, maybe even seconds, they can make a decision about, okay, should we stay here and fish, or should we pack everything up and move on a little bit further down the line? Again, start with a CTD cast and then check out the data again. So this is super, super useful. Another view of the data is actually if you just take your device and you just turn it 90 degrees, you can actually see things in landscape mode. And here, this is the exact same profile that we're looking at before, except now it's in time series view. And you can see that the depth is here, and you can see all of the data. So it's just another way of looking at it. Now on the y-axis, we have the salinity, and the x-axis, we have the time. Okay, so again, we're back to this very first view when we first connect to Ruskin Mobile. So this pane is going to become very familiar to you. Now we've viewed the data, we've done all of our sampling, fisherman A group is done. Now they're passing this along to fisherman B group, and they want to sample faster than the sample rate, which is 1 second here. So they're going to select stop deployment, and then you're going to get a warning that says, are you sure you want to stop this deployment? Which you say stop. And now you can see here on the screen, it tells you that the deployment is stopped. And if you come up to the top here, to the sample rate, you can just scroll and change it from 1 second to 32 hertz in this case, and then hit start deployment. And then you get another warning. And this warning is that when you hit erase when you start the deployment over, it's going to erase all the data that's on the logger itself. But recall, I said earlier that all of the data is constantly being synced onto your device into Ruskin Mobile. So you don't have to worry that the data is no longer on the logger because you have it already on your phone or on your device in Ruskin Mobile. So you just hit the erase button, and now you can see that the CTD is now logging again at 32 Hertz and everything's back to normal. So that's super useful, again, if you're using multiple groups and you want to change the sample rate. It's great to not have to, again, open up the logger and do that, or have the fisherman do that, like on a boat and with the fear of moisture getting inside the logger. So the last thing that this group of fishermen want to do is they want to share this data. They want to share it in particular with the researchers who are actually taking the really awesome high accuracy data and use it for scientific purposes, such as in a model. So again, we're back to the screen. And if you click the second tab over, which is the data sets, you can see all of the data sets that are currently on this Ruskin Mobile app. So here for me, this is mine. You can see that I have a couple of sample data sets, a couple of real data sets from this Brevio, and a couple of GPS tracks. And I'll talk a little bit more about the GPS tracks, but let's say I want to share all of this. So I can hit this cloud button here, and it will upload and delete all of the data off of my Ruskin device. Maybe I'm done, maybe again, I'm a fisherman and I'm done sampling for the year, so I don't need this data anymore. I've found where I want it to fish, and now I'm just ready to give all the data to the scientist. So I hit upload and delete. Another way that you can actually share the data is, instead of uploading everything and getting rid of everything, you can share an individual data set with somebody. So, maybe I'm not done for the season and I'm only halfway through sampling with the CTD, or maybe I want to actually keep the data to do some, which salinity value is the best research of my own. So in that case, again, you go down to the datasets tab and you'll find you're at this tab. And then on any particular one of these tracks, you can actually click and swipe to the left. And then it gives you three options: info, so info about that particular file; share; or delete. So I'm going to hit the share button, and then I get this to pop up. So here I can share this particular data set. Maybe I want to send it to Eric to say, hey, look at this cool feature. Or I can airdrop it from my phone to my computer, so now it's all on there. Or I can even email it to myself. So it's super useful that you can do that with individual data sets. So now that's the end of the fisherman case study. Oh, actually, sorry, one more thing. Another common question we get a lot is, how fast is the data through the Wi-Fi? So it might be super useful to not have to open up the logger, but if it takes an hour to download a CTD cast, it's not going to be super useful if I'm, if I want to get the data off quickly. So as a simple example, if we took a CTD and profiled to 100 meters and we're sampling at 8 Hertz, following at 50 centimeters a second, that's going to take 400 seconds. To go down and up, so both the downcast and the upcast. And there's so 3,200 samples per channel that's on the instrument. We have external connectors that can go on the CTD where you can get RS-232 download, and in that case, it would take 5.5 seconds to download that 400 seconds worth of data. The Wi-Fi, it would only take 4 seconds to download it. And if you used USB, so the red USB cable that comes with our loggers, you can open up the logger, use that USB, or even use an external connector that has USB on it. It will only take half a second. A really great rule of thumb is that the download of the Wi-Fi takes 1 second per 1 minute of 8 Hertz CTD data. So I'll say that again, it's a bit of a mouthful. It takes 1 second to download 1 minute's worth of 8 Hertz CTD data. So very quickly, you're not really going to notice the difference in 5 seconds or 6 seconds and 4 seconds to download the data. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to another case study. In this case, there's researchers who are on a scientific cruise, and they like to append some GPS data to their CTD data set, which is super common and really, really useful. In particular, some scientists may want to add a manual GPS point, so just one data point for, this is where we are right now. For example, if you're doing a weekly sampling regime, and you go out and you're monitoring. It's a weekly monitoring program. You go out, deploy the CTD. Maybe you actually take a GPS point before you deploy and after you deploy to see if you've drifted at all. And then you have that every week, so you know actually how close to the same spot are you actually in. And another great reason to use the manual GPS point is that maybe there's something really cool that's happened. You're out on a cruise and you just notice a front came by, or there's a school of fish, and you want to note something in the data. So it's really easy just to grab the phone and do this tag. Or maybe you want the full GPS track. Perhaps you're going, perhaps you're doing a survey down the coast and you're doing CTD profiles and you want the full cruise track to see exactly where you are. Okay, so how does this work? So again, we're back to the main screen here. I'm not exactly sure how to erase points. So if somebody drew this here, can somebody who did that just erase it if possible? So we're back to this main screen here, and you can see right here, we have this GPS tag. It tells you exactly where your current location is. And you hit the tag button, and Ruskin Mobile tells you, hey, we have the current location is now added to the data set. So super easy, that's done. And when you actually open up this data set later in Ruskin Desktop, so the full version of Ruskin, you can actually see these little green dots that are here. These are all the GPS tags. So when you click on it, it actually tells you how accurate the tag is and where you are and some more details. And you can see here, this is the full record for this particular data set. And you can see that this person was doing a lot of GPS tags. It looks like before every deployment. So manual GPS tags, super easy and useful. Okay, so now let's say if we wanted to use, actually have a full GPS track, so exactly where the ship was going the whole time. Again, back to this main screen here. If you click on the locations tab, it's gonna pull up where you are. This is actually showing you where I live in Halifax right now. During lockdown, I, of course, couldn't get it on the water to do a track, but I can show you how it works. Yeah, so you can see that it says my location and that it's not tracking. So I'm going to click down here on the start tracking. And it basically gives me a warning that says it's gonna keep tracking for 24 hours unless you come back in and say stop tracking. So it's just a reminder to how long it's going to track. So you hit the track button. And then as you're moving, it just adds on this track. So this is still under locations. You can see I just went for a walk around this marsh. Maybe I was doing some CTD casts along here. And again, it's a full track. It's not just one data point. And then you can actually find this data set under the Datasets tab. You can see here, it's actually this top one, I believe, this GPS track. And just like sharing the CTD data from the fisherman case study, we can actually swipe to the left and share it if we want, or upload it. It's just like any other data set. And this is super, super useful here, that you can see that this was a track. Somebody actually was out in the ocean doing some sampling. So here you can see we have these T's are these start and end points. And these numbers actually represent a full CTD cast, the upcast and the downcast. So Ruskin Mobile is automatically taking the data from the logger to say, am I doing a downcast or an upcast? And if you are looking very, very closely, you can actually see there's some green in here. So if you wanted to look at a particular profile, so this is again, 10 different profiles, you can click on profile 5 and it tells you that the red part is the downcast and the upcast is the green part, and it tells you how long it takes to do the upcast and the downcast. Again, great, super useful information to have sort of near real time or real time while you're on the cruise. You know, maybe there's a cool feature that you saw in the data when you start looking at it and you wanted to see, you know, exactly where it was on your track or which profile it was in. Okay, so summary. The Wi-Fi is super useful to get the data off your logger without having to open it up. The Wi-Fi feature is really flexible because it can be used on Ruskin Mobile or Ruskin Desktop, Macs, non-Macs. It's really, really easy to use. It's just twisting an end cap. It's super awesome to quickly be able to view your data. And particularly, I like to view the data just to make sure that the data looks good. You do a cast, and instead of having, again, to open it up and expose everything, to have a look like, okay, that temperature value makes sense, that salinity value makes sense. Super easy to share the data from once it's on your device to other folks, with your collaborators. And the GPS manual tag or the GPS full track is really useful to append to your CTD or other channels data set. So upcoming webinars. I mentioned one earlier. So next week we have Mark talking about the CTD performance that Eric mentioned earlier. And Greg is going to talk about Ruskin software, some pro tips. So that's the full version of Ruskin. Later in the year, later in May, Eric's going to talk about the Legato, which is the CTD that we've developed for gliders. And Greg is going to talk about RSK tools, which is a MATLAB toolbox for processing the data that you're collecting. And yes, we're going to do one on CTD and sensor calibration, which I'm really excited that Tapei is going to be showing us in June. And we're going to be doing a joint one with Eric and USGS on wave measurements. So I think that Eric's going to show how you can set up things in Ruskin to do some wave measurements, and Kurt's going to show us some actual real applications of that. Okay, sorry. So thank you everybody for sticking with me to go through this. If you have any questions, obviously I think that there have been some that have been popping up, or you can email us at info@rbr-global.com. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Candace, very much for giving us this good presentation. We've had a couple of questions that people have been texting in. I'm going to read them aloud and try to answer them directly myself, but then we'll keep the floor open for other questions that people might want to text into the chat window, or we'll pause and you can just turn your mic on and ask. A couple questions. One is, can we twist the end cap underwater to pause it or run it, and will that break the O-ring seal? And the answer is yes, you can twist it underwater. The O-ring seal stays intact both in pause and run and during the twist action. So you can do that if you wanted to. I guess that would be if there was a diver deployment and wanted to either pause it or run it while it's underwater. Another question was about the GPS signal. We know that the phone and tablet GPSs don't have as good accuracy as some survey grade GPSs. And can you input other GPS information into the tablet or phone so that you can map a more accurate course? And the way that it works is that the Ruskin Mobile feature on the platform, behind the scenes, it's always trying to grab the most accurate GPS signal that the tablet or phone will be able to provide. And sometimes the phones and tablets have some underlying architecture where it says, I've got GPS signal from cell tower triangulation or cell tower plus Wi-Fi or from the GPS, and it will always try to do the best math to get the best signal. So the underlying architecture of the iOS or Android devices is always giving what it thinks is as the best signal. So if you feed in a different GPS antenna and the device knows that it's getting its best signal from that antenna, then it will read that as well. There's no architecture within Ruskin Mobile to say use Bluetooth antenna or use a different antenna, but it will always use what it thinks is the best. So it's about configuring it that way. Another question was about whether CTDs work in freshwater environments, lakes, and yes, they do. And the other question was about how much power this takes. So there are two answers. One is that the sending the Wi-Fi data takes a little bit of power from the logger, and so it does use some of the logger batteries. That's why, as Candace said, the Wi-Fi turns off quite quickly as soon as it moves underwater, and then it comes on when it comes out of the water, but only stays on for a short period of time. And if there's no signal, it goes off. That preserves the logger batteries. The Ruskin Mobile on the app or on the phone or the tablet, of course, is not using the logger batteries. It's using the phone or tablet batteries, and so therefore you're not using any power from the logger itself. Let me see what other questions we have here. Can you give us a flexibility option to keep the old data in the logger when we start a new deployment? Candace, would you like to try to address that one?
Sorry, I'm still getting used to when I'm clicking, is it on the presentation or on Zoom? I'm just not exactly sure why you would need to keep the data on the logger when you already have it on your device. I guess it's that.
Yeah, it could be for backup. It's not a functionality we have in that now because of the way that we run the memory architecture within the logger itself. One other question: each time we twist the end cap on, the CTD records data in the same cast or a different one. So it will record it. Candace can correct me if I'm wrong, or do you want to give it a shot, Candace?
Yeah. So it's all the same data set. So it's one RSK file. If you're deploying, it comes back to the surface. You deploy, it comes back to the surface. So each of those times, that's just one cast, and it's in one large data file. If you stop the deployment and restart the deployment, then it's going to create another RSK file. So you can, as long as you're just doing, so I have one here, as long as you're just doing the run to pause and pause to run, it's going to be one data set. If you stop and restart, those are going to create a new RSK file each time.
Yeah, and even above that, if you keep it on run and you keep it logging, and you do a profile, you put it on your boat, and 2 miles later you do another profile, put it on your boat. Let's move to metric. 2 kilometers later you do another profile and put it on the boat, but it's been running the entire time. Then the Ruskin software will actually be able to auto-detect those casts because it knows what a cast looks like going down and coming up. And then in the Ruskin software, which Greg can speak about in a couple of weeks, we can run cast detection, and then it will separate those casts based on the profile structure and not based on you pushing it to pause or run. And as I was just reminded, RSK Tools, the free MATLAB post-processing software, which you can get on the RBR website and which we will also be speaking about in a couple of weeks, it can do cast detection as well. Okay. I think that's all I can keep up with in terms of reading, but let's open it up to see if anyone would like to come on to ask questions, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. So Rav asked a question about whether the data can be uploaded in Oceans 2.0 instead of Dropbox. Someone can probably correct me, but is Oceans 2.0 the Ocean Networks Canada ONC system? And if so, I believe that there already is a feed to connect the Ruskin Mobile data structure into the ONC data feed. Okay, I'm going to just pause the recording for a moment and thank everyone for joining.